This is Cast of Wonders, the young adult fiction podcast featuring stories of the fantastic. Episode 357, for April 28, 2019. Welcome. I'm Catherine Inskip, Assistant Editor and your host for today. You're listening to Little Wonders, our thematic flash fiction collections. Last autumn, Cast of Wonders ran its biennial flash fiction contest, and today we're bringing you 3 more of the finalists, as voted for by the Escape Artists Discussion Forum, forum.escapeartists.net. All 3 of these stories ended up tied in 4th place. We loved them so much we just had to keep them. Our first story is Mother's Love by Maria Haskins. Maria Haskins is a Swedish-Canadian writer and translator. She writes speculative fiction and debuted as a writer in Sweden. Currently, she lives just outside Vancouver with a husband, 2 kids, and a very large black dog. Her work has appeared in Beneath Ceaseless Skies, Shimmer, Flash Fiction Online, and elsewhere. Follow her on Twitter at Maria Haskins, and find out more about her and her work on her website, mariahaskins.com. This story is narrated by Tanja Milojevic. Voice acting has been Tanya's passion ever since she can remember. This is what she has to say about her work. I bring my truth and sincerity to every role. Acting allows me to freely express myself and put voices to diverse and complex characters. Recording stories on my tape player was a large pastime in my childhood. I also improved stories for fun with a friend as a teen, to stretch my imagination's muscles. Nowadays, I get behind the microphone to voice characters for radio dramas, ads, commercials, stories, museum exhibits and games from home. Working with various producers for the past decade has allowed me to meet so many creative friends and co-workers. Examples of shows that Tanya's been involved with include Games, The Gate, Flipped and Others in Development, Audible, Baby Teeth, Pseudopods, Podcast or Podscape, various radio dramas including Edict Zero, What's a Frequency, 11th Hour, You Are Here, A Scottish Podcast, Coach Studios, Electric Vicuna Productions, Campfire Radio Theatre, All's Fair, Organism, Greater Boston, Twilight Radio Theatre, Misfits Audio, Darker Projects, Broken Sea Audio, 19 Nocturne Boulevard, Audio Oblivious Productions, Icebox Radio Theatre, The Grey Area, The No Sleep Podcast, and more. Tanya's affirmation before each recording session is, "It's not just the voice that matters, it's how you tell the story."
Mother's Love by Maria Haskins. Narrated by Tanja Milojevic. Doctor, thanks for coming to see me and my son. I know things look bleak for him. I know what you said after the surgery, that you wish you could save Ben, that you did everything you could. Could you sit with me for a bit? It's a lot to ask. You must be tired, ready to go home. I just need someone. Thank you. All day, I've been sitting here by his bedside, useless, holding his hand, wishing I could pray. I don't usually pray, not really a believer. Do you mind if I hold your hand? It helps. Did you know I saved Ben's life once, about 20 years ago? I've never told anyone about that. He was 10 when the truck hit him. Crossing the street, didn't look, neither did the truck driver. I saw the whole thing. Steel and chrome, all that weight. My son torn apart. Afterward, the doctor said he wouldn't make it, just like you told me today. When he was brought in, after that head-on collision, I sat by his bedside then, too. My mom sat beside me just like you do now, holding my hand. I didn't believe in prayer. Mom did. Melissa, you have to pray. she told me. Pray to God and he might save Ben. I wanted to scream at her. Wanted to tell her that God is useless. I mean, if there's a God, why didn't he just stop the truck in the first place? But I didn't say that. Instead, I held her hand while she prayed. I looked at Ben's face, at the tubes and wires, at the screen that showed his life as blips and graphs and numbers. Mom was crying and praying. I didn't cry. I was just angry and hurting. But finally, I closed my eyes and tried to say something. Something that would make a difference. Like I'm doing now. It wasn't much of a prayer, really. The only words I could think of were, "Let him live." I thought those words over and over again, like a mantra or a spell. Must have said them 1,000 times. And then I felt it. Life. My mom's life. I felt it. It was like a spool of thread inside her. Like I was holding the end of that thread in my hand. In my other hand, I felt Ben's life. And that spool was empty, just like it is now. Sitting there with all my pain and rage burning through me like a fire, I felt the thread move as I unspooled my mother's life. I let it run through me into Ben. Never done anything like that before. Never dared to try it again afterward. Until today. By the time Ben opened his eyes, my mom was dead. I let go of her hand just like I'm letting go of your hand now. There. That's better. You see, Doctor, you were able to save Ben. After all.
It's an age-old idea that a parent would do anything for their child, even to the point of causing harm to others. I wondered briefly if the protagonist's mother might have had a similar power once, or if she knew of her daughter's capabilities beforehand, then decided she was probably just encouraging conventional prayers. Thoughts and prayers. They're often given but rarely answered. Knowing that the sympathy of others isn't the fix we wish it was, almost makes the protagonist's actions understandable. Did you really want to help me save my child any way you could? Our second story today is Things from Long Ago by Nathan Susnick. Nathan Susnick is a medical writer and editor who lives near Hanover, Germany. In his free time, he writes fiction. His stories have been published by Shoreline of Infinity, Gallery of Curiosities, and Triangulation, Harmony and Dissonance. You can find out more about his stories by visiting his website, www.nathansusnick.wordpress.com, or following him on Twitter @NathanSusnick. This story is narrated by Kyle Akers. Kyle Akers is a voice actor from Kansas City, Missouri. He has contributed to podcasts like Pseudopod, Chilling Tales for Dark Nights, and No Sleep Podcast. He also produces and performs in his own improv podcast called The Counselor. Prior to voice acting, Kyle toured the country as a professional musician, singing and playing bass guitar for the electropop band Antennas Up, which enjoyed success through several national television show placements and commercials. Since then, Kyle has dabbled in long-form improv and audio production while performing weekend gigs with Kansas City cover band The Magnetics.
Things from Long Ago by Nathan Susnick. A long time ago, I lived next to a girl who could remember forgotten things. We were the same age, rode the same bus, and went to the same school. Her demeanor, like her name, was somehow too old for her age, scrawny, fading away. all but forgotten. Like a girl in a Victorian photograph, she never smiled. Maud. Because of her name and looks, the kids at school ignored her. Even the teachers occasionally forgot her name. The kids at school ignored me too, so we sat next to each other on the bus, Maud and I, staring out of the window, she staring at her black orthopedic shoes. "Your math worksheet," she whispered. "What?" "You've forgotten it." I opened my backpack and found the crumpled worksheet underneath my social studies text. "That one," she said. "Thanks," I said and smiled. She didn't smile back. She was nice to me, so I invited her over. Sitting on the swings, rocking back and forth, I learned that Maud could remember where I last put my key, my piano teacher's phone number, that word on the tip of my tongue. "A superpower," I said. Maud looked toward her house, tears in her eyes. "My father has forgotten that he loves my mother, and my mother has forgotten what it feels like to be loved." As the voices in Maud's house grew angrier, Maud grew even quieter. She stopped going to school, stopped going outside. Our social studies teacher, Miss Fitz, assigned us volunteer work for extra credit. To the groans of the rest of the class, I found the perfect activity and signed both Maud and my names next to it. Because of missed days and missed homework, Maud could use the extra credit. I lied to get Maud out of the house. I can't remember what I said, just her slowly riding her bike behind me. When we got to the retirement home, Maud refused to go in. "It's too loud," she whispered. "Trust me," I said, gently taking her hand and leading her in. The home was airy and well lit, not nearly as gloomy as I had imagined. We went through the halls, Maud whispering all of the forgotten things in my ear. I stopped by a woman staring out of the window. "Wait here," I told Maud and left. I returned with a bunch of small violet flowers from the garden. "Go ahead," I said, pressing the flowers into Maud's hand. "Tell her what you heard." Maud drifted ghost-like across the floor and presented the flowers to the woman. "Here," said Maud. "He smelled like these." She motioned toward her nose. The woman took the flowers. She hesitated for a second, confused, and then held them under her nose, drawing in a breath. She blinked a couple times and looked into the distance. Finally, she took Maud's hand, smiled and said, "Thank you." Maud, the girl who never smiled, smiled back.
Of course, not every parent will do anything for their child. Maud's family has forgotten too much of what made them a family in the first place, but Maud still remembers it all. There is no balm of forgetfulness for her. She sees all the connections, all the scars. But with the help of this story's protagonist, she sees what heals us all as well, the memories that remind us of the best of what we are. Our final story today is Grounded by J.T. Nilsson. J.T. Nilsson lives with her family just outside Chicago, where she works as a freelance writer and manuscript proofreader. In her spare time, she digs into her lists of unwritten story ideas or stacks of unread books. She also enjoys bike riding, figure skating at the almost intermediate level, reading, and reading. You can learn more about her at jtnilsson.com. This story is narrated by Eliza Chan. Eliza is a writer and occasional narrator of speculative fiction. She has narrated for both Cast of Wonders and Starship Sofa, and finds it endlessly amusing that people find her Scottish accent soothing. She has had her own work featured in Podcastle's Artemis Rising this year, and also in Fantasy Magazine, Mythilla Review and Tales to Terrify. When not working on her current novel or reading, Eliza can be found board gaming, watching anime, cosplaying and dabbling in crafts. You can find out more at her website elizawchan.wordpress.com or on Twitter at elizawchan.
Grounded by J.T. Nilsson. Narrated by Eliza Chan. "I can't," Sophie sulked. "I stayed out past curfew last week and I'm not allowed to go out." but the gnome army marches onwards, cried Athna, flitting in circles within Sophie's window frame, her glowing wings a hummingbird-like blur. The pixie tribes need our human champion to bring forth the magic. We must triumph. The last time they were battling the brownies. Before that, the sprites. The clans of the other world were always in conflict, it seemed. It began when Sophie was 10, after she'd rescued the pixies by accidentally stepping on some goblin's toadstool armoury. After that, at nearly every full moon, Sophie would be summoned by the pixies, sometimes in the wee hours of the morning. She'd climb out her bedroom window and be led to a park or nearby wood to confront sprites or elves or goblins. Most time, she just had to use her size to frighten off their opponents. It worked, so the pixies believed humans had magic. Sophie had believed that too, at first. If I get caught leaving the house, I won't be able to go to my friend's party this weekend, Sophie explained. This party is more important than the future of the pixie people, Athna squeaked, her voice rising higher than it already was. It was important to Sophie. Cute Brian from freshman geometry was going to be there. She looked towards her bedroom door. Maybe if I try to explain to my mum. The pixie swooped into Sophie's room, hovering just inches from her face. You know that grown humans do not believe in our world, she said, pointing her tiny finger. They cannot. Your mother will deem you untruthful or not right in your mind. Come, my people await. Sophie peered out the window and wondered if she was still small enough to climb down without being heard. I have found a champion, another pixie exclaimed, zipping up to her window. Sophie had met him during the sprite conflict, but now she couldn't remember his name. And she brings with her a feline familiar. He gestured towards the sidewalk. Sophie looked out to see Kanaya, her 9-year-old neighbour and occasional babysitting gig, holding her fat yellow cat, French Fry. A halo of pixies fluttered about her, their light glinting off Kanaya's black braids as the awestruck girl stared. I know her, Sophie said, remembering the wondrous feeling of her own first encounter with the pixies. She will be a fitting champion. Athna flitted out the window, pausing to look back at Sophie. We thank you for your service. Sophie watched as the pixie vanished into the night. Dinner's ready. Sophie turned to see her mother in her doorway. Close that. You're letting out the AC. Sophie glanced over her shoulder and saw the warm breeze flutter her curtains. Huh, that's weird. I don't even remember opening that. She shrugged, then closed the window and went down for dinner.
Sometimes we outgrow the formative experiences of our youth, but we never do so entirely. Sophie has new responsibilities now, but she leaves her childhood friends in good hands and gives the magic of her childhood to another young girl. We can't hang on to everything forever. Sometimes we forget, sometimes we don't, but change is always just around the next corner. Parents let go of their children let go of their childhoods. And what makes each of us magical and special, that'll change too, but it's never entirely gone. Cast of Wonders relies on your donations to pay our authors and bring you the best in young adult audio fiction week after week. If you've enjoyed these stories, please consider making a donation using the PayPal buttons on our site. Every one-time, or better yet, recurring monthly subscription helps, and you have our heartfelt thanks. You can share your appreciation for these stories by leaving us a review on iTunes, sharing the episode with your friends and family, or discussing it on the EA forum, forum.escapeartists.net. We're at Cast of Wonders on Twitter. Come say hello. Cast of Wonders is a production of Escape Artists Incorporated and is brought to you by the creative team of editor and host Marguerite Kenner, assistant editors Catherine Inskip and Alexis Goebel, Associate Editors Tonya Bezpalko, Amy Brennan, Alicia Caparasso, Trace Fontil, William Haight-Miner, Andrew K. Ho, Sean Proctor, Ray O, Susie Rodriguez, Carissa Sluss, Emma Smales and Chris Tang. Our audio producer is Jeremy Carter and our community manager is Danny Daly. Our episodes are released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 international license. You can share the episode, but you can't change it or sell it. The Little Wonders theme, Neversus, is by Alexei Nov from musicalley.com. Thanks for listening.